Leicester City has gone from a title and cup-winning team competing for Champions League football to now needing to fight for survival at the bottom end of the table. In this video, we'll show you how Leicester's luxury trap has turned the tables completely for the Foxes. Just under a decade ago, Ranieri and Leicester scripted one of the most extraordinary football tales ever told, as they rose to become champions of England. But fast forward to today, and the club is hovering precariously close to the bottom of the Premier League with just a few games left to play. Needless to say, fans are finding it hard to hold on to any glimmer of hope amidst the current predicament. So what caused Leicester City Football Club's dramatic fall from grace? We will try to answer that question, but first, let's take a journey back to the 2015 to 2016 season. On May 2nd, 2016, Leicester City Football Club made history by winning the Premier League title. The same Premier League with a handful of top-tier clubs that possess a wealth of talent and history. And they didn't just win it, they did so by a 10-point margin, a feat that would make even the most seasoned football manager player envious. And yet, they achieved all of this with a mere 42.4% possession, underperforming their expected goals and completing the league's second lowest percentage of passes. How did they manage this seemingly impossible task? The answer lies in their ability to relentlessly press their opponent, recover the ball, and counter at an incredible pace. Leicester City managed to outsmart the Big Six and snatch the trophy from their grasp, defying all odds and expectations. It could also be argued that the story of this remarkable success began with the scout of the century. When manager Nigel Pearson was fired, the club chose to keep his coaching staff, including the relatively unknown Steve Walsh, who had a talent for discovering undervalued players. Already, Walsh had brought in stars like Jamie Vardy and Riyad Mahrez, and on August 3, 2015, he added N'Golo Kanté to the mix. But Kanté wasn't alone in the middle of the pitch. Danny Drinkwater led the team in ball recoveries, a testament to the team's strong midfield play. Meanwhile, Mahrez's impressive stats made him the eventual PFA Player of the Year, with 17 goals and 11 assists. And let's not forget about Vardy, who shattered records and helped propel the team to victory. And yet, despite all of this, the team's playing style is not what most people think of when they hear the word style. But perhaps that's what made their victory all the more impressive. They didn't conform to anyone's expectations. They simply played their own game and made history. After a brief slump in form following their incredible title win, Leicester City Football Club gradually climbed the ranks and reached new heights of success. In 2021, they once again made history by winning the FA Cup, with the possibility of securing a spot in the Champions League for the second year in a row. The future looked bright for the club. However, less than 2 years later, Leicester fans are feeling a sense of despair and uncertainty. The club currently sits second to last in the Premier League standings with only 4 matches left to play, a far cry from their recent successes. But let's take a closer look at the current state of things in this exciting battle for survival. At the bottom of the table, we have Southampton, which has long been considered too far back to stay up. If they can't beat Fulham on Saturday, they'll be relegated to the Championship. Leicester and Leeds, meanwhile, occupy the other 2 relegation spots and are tied on 30 points. Leeds has the toughest fixtures of all the teams fighting to stay up, and newly appointed Sam Allardyce will have to work wonders to keep his team afloat. In order to stay up, both Leeds and Leicester must outperform Everton by at least 2 points in their final 3 games, or Nottingham Forest by at least 3 points. Leicester has a better goal difference than their rivals, while Leeds is superior to Forest and slightly worse than Everton's. West Ham, on the other hand, are almost certainly safe after their victory over Manchester United. They need just 3 points from their remaining games to guarantee safety mathematically, but they're likely to need fewer points than that. Although managers typically aim for 40 points to secure safety, the critical target seems to be 34 points. For Leicester, relegation is a real possibility that could end their 9-year stint in the Premier League. There's nowhere to hide, and every game from here on out is a must-win. The question on everyone's lips is, how did they get here? Well, there are a few reasons. First, from a financial point of view, the club is really not looking good. Leicester had been ambitious and wanted to challenge the Premier League's established Big Six and sustain their push for European qualifications and trophies. To do this, they invested heavily in a squad of young, talented players and began offering longer and more lucrative contracts to keep them from being poached by bigger clubs. They also brought in Brendan Rodgers as manager and began work on a new £100 million training complex and a massive stadium expansion project. However, these ambitions came at a cost. The club was heavily committed financially and had taken out several loans from parent company King Power and Australian bank Macquarie. While they were making a loss and their debts were rising, it was manageable until the pandemic hit. The pandemic had a significant impact on Leicester's finances, with the club predicting a loss of over £50 million. But the damage wasn't far-reaching and had a wider impact on King Power, which relied on the tourism industry and was severely impacted by the pandemic. King Power International's turnover fell from $2.3 billion in 2019 to $448 million in 2021. All clubs were affected by the pandemic, but the timing of it, coupled with Leicester's heavy financial commitments and reliance on their ownership model as a safety net, made them more vulnerable than others. Moreover, Leicester City's recruitment model was once the envy of other football clubs. They had a successful strategy of selling a key player each summer and reinvesting the funds in young talent. But in the last few years, the club's approach had to change. In the summer of 2021, Leicester decided not to sell an asset due to the fears that the financial impact of the pandemic would result in a lower valuation. This decision frustrated some of the club's recruitment staff, who felt their previously trusted process was being ignored. As a result, some of them chose to leave. Leicester City's financial constraints meant that they can't afford to make mistakes in player recruitment. Unfortunately, recent decisions and investments have not gone as expected for the club, resulting in several overpaid players on their payroll that cannot be moved on. This has created a stalemate that needs to be resolved. In the next 18 months, Leicester faces the daunting task of rebuilding their squad. A group of players worth over £110 million will be able to leave for free unless something changes. Some players may be looking toward the future, while others are nearing the end of their careers. Regardless, a significant overhaul is required to get the team back on track. Leicester's playing style has also been a part of the problem. Rodgers is a manager who sticks to his football philosophy, and it worked wonders for him at Leicester City. At first, his method of patient build-up from the back, progressive passing through the lines, and high-intensity pressing proved successful in his first few years, particularly when played at a quick pace. The game plan relied heavily on fitness, energy, and pressing, and when his first-choice lineup was fit and firing, the Foxes were an unstoppable force. However, the pandemic enforced changes to the fixture list, coupled with last year's mid-season World Cup, took a toll on the players, and the team struggled to cope with the intense workload. On top of that, Leicester's muddled approach on the medical side of the club contributed to a large number of injuries. As a result, Rodgers found it increasingly difficult to field a consistent lineup, and the game plan suffered, leading to inconsistent performances. 538 Soccer Power Index ratings confirm Leicester's decline under Rodgers, with their peak performance occurring in December 2019, after which there was a slide in form and a decline in results. Over time, many players began to lose faith in the game plan, leading to a lack of confidence in its execution and more labored displays. Following numerous defeats, Rodgers frequently bemoaned the team's passive displays and lack of aggression. Ultimately, in April, Leicester City decided to part ways with Rodgers and appointed Dean Smith as the new manager. If Leicester City gets relegated next month, the consequences would be dire. The team would lose valuable players due to contracts expiring and the need to sell others to balance the books. The pressure to regain promotion to the Premier League would be immense, as the club wouldn't be able to afford the expenses of top-flight football. This would have a devastating impact on many staff members, who would lose their livelihoods. Even if Leicester manages to survive, the club would need to sell players like Maddison and Barnes to finance a squad overhaul. But if they do get relegated, other clubs will come calling, trying to poach Leicester's best players. The club would have to make do with lower-tier replacements. For loyal Leicester fans, the team's fate is a matter of deep emotional investment. No matter what division Leicester finds themselves in, they will always support the team. However, life in the Championship would be a hard pill to swallow for some fans, and this could result in lower attendance, further impacting the club's revenue. Fans are hoping for a miracle to save the team from relegation, but time is running out. However, there is still a glimmer of hope, and supporters are holding on to that hope until the bitter end. Leicester City's journey in recent years has been a roller coaster ride of success and struggle. After their historic Premier League title in 2016 and FA Cup win in 2021, they are now facing challenging times. Football is a notoriously unpredictable sport, and Leicester's journey is a prime example of this. Despite being written off as underdogs in the 2015-16 season, they defied the 5,000-to-1 odds and achieved what many thought was impossible. Similarly, the team's struggles in recent years show how quickly fortunes can change in football. Nonetheless, for Leicester City fans, it's important to remain hopeful and supportive of the team through ups and downs. Remember that football is a team sport, and victories and defeats are a collective effort. As Leicester hasn't capitalized on the money spent to recruit players, the story looks very different at Brighton. Their incredible recruitment strategy is one of the key factors in their success. Check out why in this video next.